We are live, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday night. It is 9 p.m. It is that time for you to sit back, relax. The kids are asleep. Pour yourself a nice cold drink, kick back, and enjoy another episode of Shoot the Shit Uncensored. I am your host, the bald, the beard, the beautiful Piers Austin, and tonight, it's got Don Marnell on Shooting the Shit Uncensored. And I'm pretty excited to have Don on the show. I'm a big fan of his promos, and a huge fan of Sam Osborne and the work that these guys are doing in PWA. Definitely worth checking out. They've got their upcoming show where Sam is actually the headliner. Prize Bulls on Parade, so facing Jessica Troy for that PWWA championship. So guys, you can check that out on Fight TV, or if you're in Sydney, try and get your hands on some tickets and go. It's quite an experience at a PWA event, and you won't be disappointed. But before I bring out the man that can turn can'ts into cans, I'm going to thank some sponsors. First up is A-Rock Designs. Now, A-Rock Designs is that company, ladies and gentlemen, you hear me raving about every single show that I do. They make custom cups, tumblers, T-shirts, hoodies, keychains, T-shirts, you name it. They make it with a wrestling theme, and also stuff that isn't with a wrestling theme. But they sent me my CM Punk custom tumbler. This thing is an absolute beast. I can have this thing full, last me a complete whole show. Even when I'm doing recordings on Wrestling with Tragedy, where it goes like for 2-3 hours, I've got that drink there and it just lasts me the whole time. Cold drinks cold, hot drinks hot, baby. You make sure that you check that out. You get a great price for an awesome product. But next, ladies and gentlemen, is Signal Studios. Now, Signal Studios is that recording studio based in Sydney, Australia, working with amazing bands like the Cicadas Band that supply all the intro music for the shows on the MWA podcast network. So guys, check out Signal Studios. If you need a place to rehearse, a place to jam, a place to get your creative juices flowing, then there is not a more comfortable place than Signal Studios. Or if you're an independent professional wrestler, you want to get your hands on some new intro music, something cool, something hip, something flash, something dope, something woke, whatever the kids are saying these days that means cool as shit, then hit up Rafi from Signal Studios. He can mix, master, and produce any kind of track that you want. He works with a variety of amazing artists to be able to get whatever sound that you're trying to look for. So make sure you hit them up as well. But guys, it's it's a lot has been happening in the past week. I did a whole week of streaming every single night, doing interviews with the guys from Deathmatch Down Under, and I'm really excited to have Mr. Don Marnell coming on the show, and I'm going to not waste any more time. I'm going to bring him out. Don, welcome to Shooting the Shit Uncensored.
Well, it's Don Marnell. Time for another smash hit here on Shooting the Shit. Piers, man, thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be here. And shoot the shit with you, my friend.
It's always a pleasure, man. It's I really enjoy the work that you and Sam have been doing in PWA. It's really entertaining, and by being complete heels, but also having that sort of, I don't know, there's something there with that swagger with you two that really sort of stands out to me. And I think as a fan, I really enjoy that sort of cockiness, that sort of attitude that you guys bring. And I think it's not something new in the pro wrestling world, but it's always good to see it done in a unique way like you guys do it.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, that's, I think one of these tropes in the pro wrestling world, and I'm sure the amount of, interviews you've done, autobiographies you've read, it's, it's always people who say you go out there and you turn yourself up to 11, man. And my background in wrestling, I started off in OTT, very famous promotion over in Ireland, and I was working the commentary desk there, and eventually, got the opportunity to step in the ring and start cutting a few promos. And it took me a while to kind of feel it out, but all my favorite wrestlers growing up were always the brash, the arrogant, the heels. My favorite wrestler of all time is Edge, and especially when he was in his ultra cocky, rated R superstar kind of drove. So yeah, for me it was a case of, okay, well, what kind of energy do I want to put out there? I don't want to be that sort of boring heel who's just telling the fans they're ugly, telling the fans this, that, or the other. We've got to bring a bit of fun to it. And that's kind of like what we like to drive today, to bring the fans in, to make everybody feel included, but at the same time, have that sort of we are greater than thou attitude, and there's no better man to pair yourself with when you're going to go down that road than the prize bull himself, Mr. Sam Osborne.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I really enjoy about some of the promos that you guys do, is because it's never like a personal attack on anyone. It's never a personal sort of dig on the fans, as you said, making people feel included in as part of the show. And, you know, and to be able to, like, the easy way to do that is go out there and just start going, your mother's fat, or like just doing stupid, like cheap heat, you know, what they'd call it. But for you guys to go out there and do that and draw that sort of attention, yeah, it takes it up to another level.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I agree, man. And don't get me wrong. There's a time and a place. Every now and then, if a fan has something very smart to say, you might hear something very, very basic come out of Don Marnell's mouth. But no, it is a case where, you know, I think a lot of people like to have somebody to hate, you know. And if you go to a movie, if you go to a play, it can't just be good guy, good guy, good guy, good guy. Okay, the hero never has conflict. So I think what people really get a kick out of is you know, seeing us get our comeuppance, seeing, you know, the wrestlers in the ring get their hands on me. Obviously that's not my favorite part of things, but you know, if that's what I need to do to help Sam and get across my job, then that's what I'll do, you know. And I think it is one of those things that it's almost skipped a generation. There's very few wrestling managers on the indie scene right now. You know, everybody keeps talking about, oh, you know, the heat I get. People say, oh, you're a poor man's Paul Heyman, you're a poor man's Don Callis. You say, well, I mean, these guys have not, and that's absolutely fine. I've got no issue with that. But you're saying they're the only names you can draw on. You know, these guys have been doing it 20, 25, 30 years. They've been on the scene, you know. Remember Don Callis as a manager for the Truth Commission back in 1998, 1997.
Yeah.
That's who you want to tell me I'm a poor man's of? That tells me that there's not enough people wanting to do what we're doing. And I think that's why there was such a gap in the market. And that was identified at PWA. A lot of people came up to me on day one and said, you know, this is great because I think this is what's missing from the show. And if you see that since we've started doing what we've done, there have been 2, 3, maybe even 4 dynamics such as ours start to pop up. So that means that it's good. It's a refresh, and it's hopefully started to get a lot more people involved and get them, you know, the stepping stone that they need to get in the ring or whatever it is they want to do.
Yeah, and I agree with you with what you said. Like the manager role has really skipped a generation, and you know, the manager on the outside adds such an extra element. You know, and you know, you mentioned Paul Heyman, and you know, Paul Heyman's with a guy who can talk very well on the microphone, so he doesn't need to be a mouthpiece there, but he adds that extra element there. Being compared to someone like that, okay, like that is a huge compliment to sort of take on. But even saying that as well, to have that uniqueness, like to be a manager in PWA and to have that as well, like, which is, you know, even in Australian wrestling, you don't see much manager wrestler combinations at all.
Yeah, well, and this comes back to something that I say to a lot of trainees, you know, when I do get the opportunity to talk to them, is that from everything that you can do in the pro wrestling world, it will benefit you to going towards whatever your ultimate goal is. Now, you know, being an active competitor was never part of my goal. I got into the wrestling industry 6 years ago, so I was already in my mid-20s. I was coming out of my 20s, but I wanted to get on that commentary desk, and I started off. I did a couple of ring announce jobs. I was lucky enough to get the chance to cut a demo for OTT. And then when I came over here, I hadn't actually managed before I got to PWA. So Sam is not only the first client of the MMA, he's my first client in any promotion ever. And what I say is, if there are opportunities to do commentary, if there are opportunities to you know, work the you know, even work the ring bell, you know, help the camera crew out, do whatever you can, because you will get such a new appreciation for the overall industry. And when it comes to managing, you will start to hopefully see a few trainees who are probably on the cusp of breaking into the ring and breaking into their own, hopefully their own programs, their own storylines. you will hopefully start to see them peak up as managers or as valets or as accompaniments, because it's a great way to get yourself used to working in front of the crowd. It's a great way to get yourself used to just interacting. It's a great way to get yourself used to the timing. And there's no better place to do it than right out there. You can't do it in a training ring. You can't do it in a training hall. You've got to get out there and get it done. So I think that the renaissance of the manager, as we're saying in Australian wrestling right now, I'd encourage more people to get involved. I'd encourage everybody, if you're thinking, okay, well, I'm not totally comfortable on promos right now. Well, how about you don't cut promos for yourself? How about you cut promos for somebody else, so you can have that little disconnect and just get used to talking face to face and with a live mic in your hand and a hot crowd in front of you, because there's no substitute for that,
Yeah, 100%. And I think as well, like it's, there's probably a lot of talented people out there that could add that element out into the business of professional wrestling that probably think, okay, the physical aspect of it is not my cup of tea, but there's other avenues to go down into that road. You mentioned Edge as someone that you're really sort of into. Who are some of the other people that you're into? I'm kind of going to go like a Roddy Piper sort of thing, like if we're going to go right back old school.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Roddy's one of the greatest talkers of all time. Don't get me wrong, but what a lot of people don't know is that I was as huge a wrestling fan as I've been for the foreseeable past. I was quite late to the wrestling scene. When I say late, I mean I wasn't asking for wrestling figures when I was 6 years old. I probably started watching wrestling when I was about 12 years old. And that was purely because we just didn't have the channel in Ireland. There was one channel that was on, it was Sky One. If you didn't have that channel, you didn't watch wrestling. It was, obviously no network back then. And I don't know if you've ever seen the South Park episode where they have the Chin Pokemon craze, and they start, and Kyle's always a step behind, so the boys have their game systems and he's still got the figures, and then the boys want something else and he gets the game system. That was me with wrestling. I was always one step behind. I'd be like, hey guys, did you see No Way Out? They're like, WrestleMania was on last night. I'm like, all right, F me, right? So so that was something. So I kind of got into it around the year 2000. That's when I really started to watch heavy, and The Rock was instantly the star. I think back then you were a Rock guy or a Stone Cold Steve Austin guy. Yeah. Although I like to emulate Steve a little bit with my can drinking, I was very much a The Rock guy back in the day. But I also loved the heels. I loved Kurt Angle. I think Kurt Angle's probably the best comedic heel of all time. What he was able to do and some of that, like he had no right to be that funny, and his timing was perfect. Edge, I love the Hardy Boys. Getting on a few years after that, the likes of Mr. Kennedy, the Brian Kendrick, I think is one of the biggest untapped potential things that WWE ever did. But you can see a trend here. It's the brash, it's the cocky, it's the funny, it's the people who never, they're not going to have as many titles as you got on your back wall over there, but they're going to be that part of the show where you literally tune in to see them get their ass kicked. And that's always what I wanted to bring to it as well. When in the past, when Charlie Evans has got her hands on me, or Istri at the last Factory Theatre show, it's that pop that I live for, that sort of thing where I've taunted and I've agonized, and to hear that pop and people go, yeah, I want you to see you get your ass kicked on Marnell. That's strange as it sounds. That's what keeps me coming back to PWA.
Yeah, and that's getting that that heat from the crowd to really sort of rile them up, and it shows that when you guys do. But as far as like once you got into the side of professional wrestling, what was it that sort of actually got you like actually involved in it per se? Like, how did you fall into the world of wrestling?
It's a good question. So I was when OTT wrestling started in Dublin City, it's well known that I do a lot of work with the Guinness Brewery, and I was working out of the Guinness Brewery in Dublin at that time. And OTT's original haven, its original home, was the Tivoli Theatre, which is a 15-minute walk from the Guinness Brewery, right? So it's absolutely perfectly placed. Unfortunately, got knocked down to build a hotel because the Irish government well, that's another story. We won't get into that. But basically, I was going as a fan. Me and my boys would just go down. They used to sell. You Aussies wouldn't understand this, but we would do 3 cans of beer for €10, so 3 cans for a tenner. And you just, sit there and have 3 cans for a tenner, and it was. And these are long necks too. These are tall boys, not these little
really?
Aussie cans that we drink over here. So you just sit there, and it was. They catered. I don't know how familiar you are with OTT, but their early shows really catered for the 18 plus demographic. But they did it in a very Irish way. They did it with characters initially that wouldn't necessarily translate overseas. A perfect example would be the session mot Martina, who did come over to PWA at one stage, but the session mot originally started as part of a faction called the Lads from the Flats, which the best Aussie translation I can give you is they were a bunch of housos or housos. I don't know if the pronunciation's right. And she was the female part of that. So anyway, I digress. I was running a podcast for Balls.ie, a WWE review podcast, and I was also on a radio show back home on a station called 98 FM, which is fairly big stature in Dublin. I was running the stand-up comedy club, so I had a lot of irons in the fire. In no way was I a name. Nobody had a clue who I was. But when I proposed to the owner of OTT, Joe Cabray, that me and a friend of mine, Angus, who was a perfect kind of foil for what I like to do, because he's like classically trained 3rd generation actor. So we proposed, hey, you don't have a commentary team, you're releasing on demand, we'll do it for you. We'd be delighted to get involved and get on board. At that stage, there was a culture in OTT where the roster would always go out afterwards, and at that stage we were being invited to these nights out, so I knew everybody anyway, and there was a lot of people kind of putting us forward and saying, yeah, these guys would be great. And then we did about 2 shows, and I think on the second show we did, it was a show called Invasion Super Show. And to give you some names that were on this, there's a great poster that goes around, but to give you some names that were on it, like on this Invasion Super Show, we had I think there was Will Ospreay, Pete Dunne, Jigsaw, Tyler Bate, all of our stars. So like the Kings of the North and Jordan Devlin and the Session Mot. You had Ryan Smile, rest in peace. You had War Machine, the Viking Experience or whatever they're going by now. It was unbelievable. Like the next show, then we had the likes of Keith Lee and Dominic Dijakovic and all these boys. So the name of OTT was out there, and we just got thrown in the deep end. So within 12 months, I would say I had probably called a match of every big name on the independent scene, and I include right to the top the Young Bucks, Cody Rhodes. Everybody was kind of big on OTT. And which is great because it looks like OTT are hopefully going to start to get some dates arranged sometime soon. Because a lot of my friends have been chomping at the bit to get back out. But yeah, look, in a nutshell, I was doing a lot of stuff in Irish media to very small scales, and being a wrestling diehard fan, it just kind of made sense. And I was lucky enough that they gave us a chance. And don't get me wrong, I still reread some of the reviews that we got from our early shows because we absolutely stank up the place. It took us a long time to remember or just even realize things like, you don't always have to talk. This isn't radio. The dead air is okay. Just sometimes let the moment be. But it was just a case of, ironing out the fire, taking a lot of criticism and learning what worked. And I think by the end of it, I think we were pretty damn good. I think a lot of people were kind of calling us the best commentary team on the European scene, which was a big compliment. So, just something that I love to do, and that's kind of how we got into it.
And how did you get from there over into New Japan? How did that opportunity come?
Let me take you back to one crazy night 2 years ago. So we had Millie McKenzie and Session Mot Martina, 2 very good friends of mine from Ireland and the UK, were wrestling with PWA. And when I left Ireland, I had not officially retired, but I had stepped away from wrestling. I hadn't gone to a show since I moved here at the start of 2019. 5 months into 2019, Session Mott and Millie are like, hey, we're doing this show. Would you like to come along? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I was driving them around as the day went on anyway. And we were just hanging out and catching up. And then we went to the show and we were going to go out afterwards. But at the show, I met obviously the powers that be at PWA, and this, the rest of the story kind of fills itself in. But I also met the general manager of New Japan Pro Wrestling, who was over promoting the show with Robbie that they were going to be doing in Melbourne. We had a chat, exchanged details, and he didn't claim to have heard of me, nor would I expect him to. But he took my email. He was like, you know what? We've got a show here in Melbourne. I'll listen to some of your stuff, and if it's any good, you never know. You might get a call. And I did. And
Wow.
got an email from their talent relations department about 6 weeks later, basically saying, can you get to Melbourne? Are you free? We'll fly to Melbourne. Are you free to do this show in Festival Hall? And you're going to be commentating alongside Chris Charlton, who is a great hero of mine. And I was like, yeah, I thought somebody was having me on. I was like, this is ridiculous. So yeah, that was a huge, huge opportunity for me, and it actually went really well. To hear a lot of the team from New Japan tell it, there was a lot of appetite to kind of bring me in on future shows, but just opportunities weren't really setting where they'd hoped, and obviously they haven't had a chance to run a tour here again. But there was even a little whisper, and this is an exclusive behind the curtain, but they even at one stage were asking about availability for me to go over and do the show in London.
Oh, wow.
And ended up, so they were, which I think logistically to fly me from Australia to London wasn't maybe on the budget the easiest. But that was, at one stage, the original plan was for me, Chris Charlton, and Gino Gambino to do that show in London, which would have been amazing. But hey, look, plans change and things change, and Gino's doing great with those guys, and all the more power to him. And you never know. But the door is definitely still open there. I'm on really good terms with the New Japan guys, and you never know. We might do work again.
Yeah, I mean, I think once, the COVID situation, international borders start opening up, it's like, and they can start coming back and do shows here. Like it's, it'd probably cost them a lot less doing shows here than it would the US anyway. So, as far as like, flying people in and over and stuff. So.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, there's such appetite here. Both shows were really, really well received last time. So yeah, I think, it's definitely something on the cards, definitely on their front of mind as well.
And obviously, you coming into, PWA and being a part of this promotion here in Australia, like, you've worked with OTT, you've worked with New Japan Pro Wrestling. And as far as like, obviously from independent professional wrestling goes, how do you find, how does PWA compare to like an OTT or, a New Japan would probably be that next level above, which is no disrespect to PWA, it's just size and finances, etc. would play.
Yeah, well, I mean, New Japan, I would kind of take out of the conversation in the sense that it's just a different world. It's a very, it's just a very, very differently run company, being an international and everything like that. What I would say is that the night that I went to see Millie and Session Mott wrestle, I had no real intention of getting back into the indie scene. It was actually just the show that they were running that night that impressed me the most. And it just kind of, gave me the bug a little bit again. I wasn't expecting to enjoy another indie show as much. I think a lot of people who've experienced the atmosphere of an OTT show will say, and this is performers alike, will kind of say there's nothing like it. But I would definitely say that the closest thing I've ever been to has been a PWA show when it comes to indies. The company is incredibly well run. It is a very, very professional organization. They are definitely thinking ahead all of the time and thinking about new ways to kind of maximize viewership, new ways to bring the fans and get them integrated. And what I would say is, purely from a talent perspective, I suppose the only criticism that was ever given to us around OTT was that quite often there weren't an abundance of Irish stars on the card, purely because we had access to everyone in the world. And if you're gonna, if you want to sell a lot of tickets, then you bring in these massive big names. I mean, we had international dream matches. Timothy Thatcher taking on Minoru Suzuki, Keith Lee against Tomohiro Ishii. Just happened within our walls. So the case was often said, oh yeah, but what about the Irish talent? So what we've said is that, and don't get me wrong, that did start to change quite a lot as a lot of the Irish talent became a lot more, I suppose, ready for the spotlight. But what I will say about PWA is that they don't rely, not that they can now anyway, but they don't rely on bringing in overseas imports, nor do they need to. They have a depth and a talent pool that is quite frankly, staggering. And what I will say is that their trainers, not just the owners, but the trainers as well, are world class. So they really do build the right mentality, the right sort of not just the in-ring stuff, but just the right way of being, the right way of handling yourself. And I will say that it's a very impressive company overall.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's everyone I've spoken to from PWA just always seems to have that sort of teamwork mentality, all building for the one goal of making this bigger and better. And that's something that is quite impressive to hear when, if you look into sort of past wrestling and all the history of, backstage politics in wrestling, and you hear something like that, it's refreshing to hear that the industry's taken a turn, well, at least in the Australian scene.
Yeah, I agree, man. And look, there's some, like the funny story is with the Irish scene, right? This will take you as a surprise, but two of the biggest, arguably the two biggest male Irish stars ever, being Finn Balor and Sheamus, never wrestled each other in Ireland because they were from rival schools. So you had, the Fight Factory Pro Wrestling and the Irish Whip Pro Wrestling schools, and they did not mix. And this is to your point of there wasn't really this thing of, okay, all for one and one for all. Let's all try and help each other and make each other better. Back then, kind of, early 2000s, late 90s, there was that sort of negative atmosphere. That's gone, thankfully, and over here it seems to be the same way. Definitely in New South Wales. I haven't had the pleasure to work interstate over here, but what I can say is, definitely in PWA.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you is, how did you end up over here in Australia?
Just day job. Yeah, I've got I work for an alcohol company, and they needed just needed me to do a job over here. So I came over for 2 years. That 2 years ended in December, so I'm into my extension of 2 years now, and then we'll see what the future holds then.
Yeah, nice. So, and and that's the thing, you've been able to come here, make a scene on the Australian wrestling scene, with Sam Osborne. And that's the thing I want to ask you about as well, is like, how did that partnership come to be? Because it seems like you guys just go together so very well.
Well, the funny thing is, when I arrived first, before I started working with PWA, I did another podcast, and it's so funny and so relevant currently. But before I was even on the roster, so to speak, somebody asked me on a podcast who I thought the two standout stars of PWA were, and I said, well, let's take the established pros aside. I think my two ones to watch for the future are Sam Osborne and Jessica Troy. And I said that word for word. And now here we are, just less than a month away from a title match. PWWA, where my boy, Sam Osborne, is going to take on the aforementioned Jessica Troy. I chose Sam. This is 100% legit. I was asked by PWA, they said, if you were to come on board as a manager, is there anybody that you'd like to work with? And I said, give me Sam Osborne. Straight away. Didn't even hesitate. And that made a lot of sense overall. Sam and I had a beer. There's a great picture, actually, of Sam and I having a beer that was papped by Matty Wahlberg. from Christmas, the year before last. But yeah, we're literally just talking about, look, if we did work together, how would it look? What would it look like? What would be the benefits? Everything like that. And look, it made sense to him. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters to me. I have given up on my, everybody who gets into wrestling wants to work for one of the big companies and make it a full-time living of, more or less 99% put that to bed. So I'm not here for me. And certainly if I was just doing it for fun, there's a lot of ways that you can have fun on a Saturday night, that don't involve, drinking one can beside a ring, let's just say. So, look, it's a case where I am in it now to help those who are in it for the long run. And while I'm still useful, I'll still be around. If it gets to a stage where I think, you know what, I don't provide as much value, or that there's somebody knocking on the door, 10 years younger who's ready to take a spot, maybe that'll be a case then where I say, okay, well, maybe let's let the Aussie audience see one of their up and comers take a role like mine, take that big brash manager role. But for now, we're still a long way from being finished with Sam. And I wouldn't necessarily say that this is the apex, that this is the end of it. This is definitely a massive milestone coming up at the Factory Theatre June 13th on Fight TV. The PWWA Championship's never been held by a male. And I know people are saying, oh, yeah, but it's a women's title. Yes, the PWWA was originally a women's title. Jess was the one who decided to open it up to all challengers. And if the champion is happy to defend against all challengers, who are we to say no to that? So she hasn't been forced into this. If anything, she's goaded us into this. If anything, she's been the one who's laid down the gauntlet, because in the last 15 months, she's the only one who's beaten Sam. And I'm remiss to say she's beaten him twice. What I will also say is that neither of those were singles matches. So Sam is completely undefeated in singles competition. And you have my word that on June 13th in the Factory Theatre, that will continue. And if that continues, then that means that we walk out with the PWWA Championship. So call it a spoiler, call it whatever you want, but that's how I see it going. I think you might still be muted, my man.
Apologies. With PWA, they're very progressive with intergender wrestling. Did you find, was OTT the same, or was it a different kind of beast over there? Like, was OTT doing...
Oh, at the end of the day, as long as the performers feel safe working with whoever they work with, then gender, by their admission, doesn't come into it. Session Martina was always wrestling intergender back home. There was a lot. I mean, we had one of the all-time great OTT matches. If you want to go back into the annals, it was Scrapper Mania 4. And we have this former OTT women's champ, Raven Creed, who was, maybe 5'3", 5'4", but 19 years old. And she was in a 5-way dance with, I believe it was Gino Gambino, Mark Haskins, LJ Cleary, one of our local competitors. And the last one, it escapes me. I'll look it up. But anyway, this is a case where she said, yep, this is a challenge that I want to take on. And, she was happy to wrestle that match. And it's one of those things where I think at the end of the day, as long as everybody's safe, as long as everybody's looking after everybody, then that's, then if the female athletes are happy working with the male athletes, like your Charlie Evans of the world, like your Jessica Troy's, then everybody's safe, everybody's happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I've always, said I was never a huge fan of it to begin with. And it's just because of, when you're raised and brought up, it's like men don't hit women. Yeah. Being a wrestling fan and being probably, so obviously I do a couple of podcasts with wrestling. So I'd say I'm a little bit of a fan. Now I can sort of sit there and watch two people having a good wrestling match and appreciate it at a different level, if that makes sense. Whereas I think that, you're going to have hardcore people that are against man versus woman, and you're going to have the other side of the audience that are for it. And I think it's always going to have that 50-50 split.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And, I'm very sensitive to make sure that I understand, certainly, because, without getting too deep into it, I completely understand that this would be a trigger for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, I think it is one of those things where it is an athletic contest. And if the female athletes are comfortable and they want to take on the male athletes, then that is empowering, and I support them in doing that.
Oh, absolutely. And I stand there right with you on it. It's, like I said, it's something that, after I'd seen it done well, I could appreciate it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, 100%.
So, but obviously Sam going up against Jessica Troy at the next show. Where do you see Sam going from there? Like, if he was to go on, win at the show, where does Sam's career go from there?
Well, this will be, I would go as far as to say this is the biggest match of his career, and to beat Jessica Troy would be the biggest win of his career. Jess is the only person that we've gone up against, as I said before, over the last 15 months that has submitted Sam, and it's happened twice. So not only just to set the record straight, but also to actually get his first chance to obtain PWA singles gold. I think what we learned very, very quickly from working with Sam was that he's a confidence player. Yeah. So one loss turned into 2, turned into 3, turned into 4. So my job was to stop that, all right, to stop the rot, put it full stop at the end of the year. What I said to him was, I wish he would have taken me on in December. He took me on in February of the following year. I said, mate, you've got a January loss against Fudge that we can't get rid of until the next year starts. Yeah. So I just wanted a clean slate over the year, but we've gone past 12 months now, so we're golden. Once the wins started to rack up, the wins didn't stop. Once the gold starts to rack up, the gold won't stop. He takes that title. Who's to say that you can't have 2 titles in PWA? There's no reason for us to just go, that's great, we're done now, we'll just defend that until we lose it. No. Why would we?
True. Very true. I mean, I think it comes down to, you look at PWA's roster. I think right now at the top, you've got Ricky South, you've got, Sam Osborne, and those two are probably the top, and obviously you can't forget, Jessica Troy, Charlie Evans as well, the top, contenders, in PWA at the moment, and the probably, the main event players right now on the PWA scene.
100%. But it's Jess on June 13. That's number one. We can't make plans for the future until we know how that one's going to go down. So, Ricky's going to do what Ricky's going to do. Ricky's an amazing champion. I'm delighted for him. But, we've got Jess on June 13. If we win that, who knows what happens next?
Also, with the show where, at the end of the Rumble match that Sam won, Mark Wahlberg, cut a very heartfelt promo after the match itself.
I don't think Mark Wahlberg cut anything. I think Matty Wahlberg.
Matty Wahlberg. Sorry,
it would have been amazing to see Mark Wahlberg.
Sorry, Matty Wahlberg. My apologies. Cut a very heartfelt promo at the end of it. Obviously being a part of that inner workings of PWA, how emotional was that night for all of you guys?
Yeah, it was definitely. I'm not at training, 3 times a week like they all are. I show up at all the shows, but PWA very much is a family. They train together. A lot of them live together. They all work together. They are a unit. And Matty was definitely one of the elder statesmen of the unit. One of the things is, it is a very young locker room. Matty's a young guy, but Matty's probably 30, and therefore he was one of the elder statesmen of that locker room. There's a lot of kids in their, late teens, early 20s that need guidance and need a leader. And he was one of the leaders, not the only one, but he was one of the leaders. And he helped a lot of people. He helped a lot of people kind of get to where they've gotten so far, built a lot of confidence within people. He's definitely, anyone who saw him on Survivor will know, but he's one of the most vocal people in any room. So that's definitely going to be a different atmosphere when he goes. But he deserved that opportunity in a big way. And I hope it turns out great for him.
Yeah, I definitely think it will. Incredible talent, and I do apologize for the slip of the name earlier. It was.
I'm sure he'll have to change his name anyway, because I'm not sure Mark Wahlberg will have too much to say about it.
Who knows? Maybe he could be change it to Matty Goldberg. Become Goldberg's become Bill Goldberg's Australian cousin or something, or long lost nephew. But with the show coming up, where can people find tickets for it? Are tickets still available for the upcoming show?
Tickets are still available. They are selling quickly. I say the best thing to do is to go on to any of PWA's social medias. You'll see the links to buy tickets right there. It is available on Fight TV if you can't make it. But June 13, you will see us in the main event, and we'll have a few surprises up our sleeve for that night, to be sure.
And, as I said earlier in the intro, guys, you're not going to be disappointed when you're going to a PWA event. Even if you can't make it, you live on the other side of the world, check it out on Fight TV. As I said before, one of the most progressive companies out there. They put on amazing shows with amazing talent, and from bell to bell, you won't be disappointed with the talent that you see that Australia are putting out, especially from a company like PWA. But, guys, it is that time of the show. It is time for 60 Seconds with Piers. Don Marnell has been briefed, warned, advised of how this game is going to be going apart. But, Don, how it's going to work is I'm going to fire questions at you for 60 seconds. You've got to answer as quick as you can. As soon as that time runs out, that's when we stop. Are you good to go, my friend?
Am I being scored on this? Do I have to get as many as possible? How do I win this? I'm very competitive.
Well, consider you're the only one playing. You're guaranteed to win. Like the questions are not going to be trivia questions. They're going to be multiple choice. So it's going to be very easy. So
all right, let's go. I'm ready.
Snapchat or TikTok?
TikTok.
Favorite song to sing at karaoke? Seal,
Kiss from a Rose.
Name a gross meal combo that you love that no one else does.
Oh my God. I've been drinking hot whiskeys, whiskey and sugar. I know a lot of people wouldn't mix that, so that.
Fair enough. In 5 minutes, you are being shipped to outer space. What two personal belongings do you take with you?
My Nintendo Switch and a copy of Pokemon Snap.
Would you rather fight 2 horse-sized ducks or 100 duck-sized horses?
100 duck-sized horses.
Aussie rules or NFL?
I'm still trying to figure out the difference.
Favorite wrestling referee?
Mike Chioda. No, Charles Robinson.
What chore do you hate doing the most?
Oh, dishes. 100%.
iTunes or Spotify?
Spotify.
Time. There you go. I'll
tell you why I had to change my answer to Charles Robinson. I remember tweeting him when I first got Twitter and thinking I was hilarious. And I tweeted him, I said, mate, if I ever get married, will you officiate proceedings at my wedding? And he replied to me in all lowercase rather, with no punctuation, just simply 2 letters. No. I was like, he took the time to reply. All right. Well, I'm not confused about it. I know where I stand. Charles Robinson will not be officiating my wedding.
Wow. Charles, don't be a dick.
What a guy. No, I was made up. I was showing all my friends and they were like, who's Charles Robinson? I was like,
they're going like, what, why is he wearing a bow tie? Like, what's his deal? Is he a waiter? But man, look, we really appreciate you coming on tonight, Don. It's been amazing to have you on. We'd definitely love to get you back on again. Maybe next time we bring you and the prize bull on as well. So get both you guys on and shooting the shit uncensored. But where can everyone find you on social media, Don?
Oh, you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram at Don Marnell.
There you go, guys. And guys, make sure June 15th,
June 13th.
PW, June 13th. Apologies.
June
again.
15 is the Mark Wahlberg show. June 13 is where, and it's a bank holiday weekend. So June 13, it's a Sunday, but you should have the Monday off.
June 13th, guys. Make sure to check it out. Get your tickets to Prize Bulls on Parade, PWA's next event. Check it out on Fight TV. And ladies and gentlemen, it's been an absolute honor having you on, Don. Thank you for giving up some time on a Tuesday evening to sit here and shoot the shit with me. And guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Until next time, we'll catch you soon. Peace.